on. And if you look around, you see that people are holding their phones, torchlight, serving as the only means of illumination. The bright light you see from the right is from our camera here. So it's the same thing. And you see a lot of people here who are gathered to see what the result is like. It shows the interest that Nigerians have. But it's quite unfortunate that we are operating in this kind of environment. Look around you, you have young ones,
yes,
journalists, everybody is here just to see
but
what the result will be like. And
Ibrahim, the difference here
around training.
I beg your pardon. It's actually Kasim Kasali. Kasim, that you're at a polling unit there, not a collating center.
Yes, this is a polling unit. Election started here 4.5 hours behind schedule. So they voted until around 7:30, and this is just the beginning of sorting and counting. It's the same situation all around Benin KB. Most of the polling units, just one started voting at 10:30 a.m. in the morning. All the other polling units in Benin KB started voting at 12:30, between 12:30 and 1 p.m. this afternoon. So this is where we are now. It's just sorting and counting now.
Okay. And probably people might not have thought that it would take as long as it has taken. And so maybe they didn't provide for a generator. What did you come up with as to why we are waiting? And once you're on the line, you will vote, no matter how long it takes. We understand that. But were there no generators provided for in case they were needed?
Generator here. There is no generator provided here or anywhere we visited today. And we've gone around some of the polling units this night as we speak. This is where we decided to stay for the light so that people can see for themselves. Nigerians are interested in voting. People are here waiting to know the results. But this is the current situation.
Okay.
Just phone light, our own camera light, and the people waiting. You can see some of the core members who are adult staff, some without their footwear now. They are tired really, but it's just what
they will have to.
I think they are getting.
Yes, exactly. You were saying that it being a polling unit, there can't be generator, but people.
When I say they can be generated, the reason I said that is because this is not unusual. For the collation center, yes, it's not something I have seen. I mean, in my years of covering elections, but for this polling unit, it's not unusual. And remember, look, where do we use as polling units anyway? You could have polling units on the road. You could have them. You could have polling units anywhere. Even in Lagos here, there were polling units along the roads, streets. So not in people's houses, just open spaces. So who would then provide generators? What you would expect, and I think INEC would have anticipated that election at that polling unit would have been concluded earlier than now, 2:30 or maximum 2-3 hours after. Yes, exactly. But then you heard the reporters say that election started 4 hours behind schedule there, and I think in a number of this kind of situation across the country.
Let me just, I beg your pardon, you can continue, but let me just release Kasim Kasali, in Benin Kebbi. Thank you very much for bringing us that depressing report, but it needed to be had. This is following from IOS. We'll also be checking. We'll soon be linking up with TJ Adeoye to find out what she has. But you were just saying that, well, the nature,
especially in Yola, because in the polling centers where I monitored, it wasn't such a problem. It was easy. It was easier for people to sort out their names in the voters register and then get on to get accredited with the beavers, and of course get on to the big business of the day, which was voting. Adamawa had over 2.1 million registered voters in this particular elections, and of course there were 4,104 polling units, and at least one beavers was deployed to each of this. peace was such also another area where in Yola, peace actually reigned a whole lot because there was a heavy presence of security. Now, the police had deployed over 12,000 policemen. The army had deployed over 1,400 army personnel, and of course 250 officers of the NSCDC were actually on ground. I would say that in the centers where we visited, where I monitored, there was not exactly an issue of underage voting. Many of the people who came out to vote and stood there to count their votes and all of that were actually young people. There were people who were older and above 18 as we saw it.
Well, thank you very much, Mary Chinda, our correspondent in Yola, Adamawa State capital.
And of course, the two election observers are still with us. Professor Jibrin Ibrahim, who's a senior fellow at the Center for Democracy and Development here in Abuja. He's chair of the board of Nigeria's Premium Times newspaper. He's also a noted psophologist and political science and development consultant. And Santiago Stocker, who is an independent Republican Institute and National Democratic Institute International Election Observation Team Director. And just give us a sense, Mr. Stocker, of how widespread your, if you like, dragnet is across Nigeria. I mean, can you actually speak credibly about the observations that you've made? And I'm told that he can't hear us, so whilst we're fiddling with the knobs to get him back in, let me talk to the man who's sitting next to us, who is, of course, Professor Jibrin Ibrahim. It's interesting, Prof, that someone was talking about reading Chinua Achebe's A Man of the People, which was about Nigerian politics. It was written in the 1960s, but absolutely brilliant in describing today's politics, where you feel the texture and the satirical elements all still enormously relevant today.
Absolutely. I wrote a published paper on how the best way to read Nigerian politics is to read Chinua Achebe. And his key novels that went through...
tell us, how did voting go in your starting from voting?
Okay, we went out early in the morning. As early as 7 o'clock, we left our homes. We went out as journalists, as watchdog of the society. We need to bring people up to speed with series of happenings of the election process. So I first visited Alhaji Kyari 004 polling unit at Gwenge 3, and it's in the Maiduguri Metropolitan Council. And I saw a lot of people trekking. And earlier on, when I was speaking with Yori, I told him that I saw a 71-year-old woman trekking about a kilometer to the place. I was so excited to speak with her. She said it is her own right, and she went out with her friends. And I saw her grandson, and luckily it was his first time to vote, and he was so much excited. So
yeah, I felt that excitement in the air.
Reasons why we couldn't open the polling units on time. One, the problem of logistics, in spite of our best effort. But another contributory factor to the late opening of the polling units is actually the perennial insecurity in the country. The bimodal voter accreditation system, the BVAS, deployed nationwide for the first time, has been functioning optimally in most parts of the country. And we hear actually less and less of complaints about the functionality of the bimodal voter accreditation system than we hear about our other processes.
Earlier in the day, the president and his family cast their votes in the ongoing presidential elections in Daura. The president voted in...
So now we know that, with the 19 states and federal Territory. It will have a broad perspective on how the election plays out. But our observation effort has been a long one. We started almost a year ago assessing the electoral landscape and observing elections in Ekiti, elections in Oshun, meeting with civil society stakeholders, government stakeholders, security stakeholders. And we understand that a credible, a transparent, and a peaceful election is a long process. And so we've taken that approach to it. It's not just what happens on election day. Of course, that's incredibly important. And Nigeria has incredibly strong civil society and many other observation groups as well. And in fact, the recommendations of our last assessment on the election landscape was to ensure that election observation efforts learn from each other and are well coordinated. So our picture is principally informed by our observers in those states, but our assessment is conducted, with a broader understanding based on what we've done over the past year, and also based on the broader context and what civil society and other observation groups are doing. So it's a much more comprehensive view than just observing in a few states on election day. We've really taken a broad approach to this.
Well, we want to thank you very much indeed for the work that you're doing in Nigeria, and also to thank you for being on the program tonight. Santiago Stocker is the director of the Independent Republican Institute and National Democratic Institute International Election Observation Team. And also, I want to thank you exceedingly, as always, Professor Jibrin Ibrahim, the noted psephologist, Professor of Political Science and Development Consultant, who's also a senior fellow at the Center for Democracy and Development in Abuja, and chair of the editorial board of Nigeria's Premium Times newspaper. Thank you to both of you.
Well, let's cross now to Nigeria's commercial capital, Lagos, where we have Arise News correspondent Oba Adeoye joining us for an update on how the polls played out in Lagos State. Oba, good evening. Thank you for being on the program. We do know that there had been incidences reported in Lagos earlier today. What's the situation on ground now?
Yes, counting of ballots has ended in several polling units across the state, and as we speak, people are expecting, the final announcement of results from the state. We visited quite a number of places in Lagos. During the poll, I can tell you that it was relatively peaceful across major parts of Lagos, except where we have pockets of violence here and there, with political talks coming to disrupt the voting activities. I went to Surulere for an instance where we got reports that some political talks came around, and they were shooting sporadically into the air to scare voters away. And in the disturbance that occurred thereafter, people were injured and a lot of people had to already leave the polling unit for safety. Even some security men had to pull their uniform and wear something else, mufti, just to to cover up themselves from danger. And I saw some empty shells, empty bullets there at the polling unit as evidence that indeed this round they destroyed a lot of polling materials there at that polling unit. The same thing was recorded in the Etiosa area of the state, where some unknown persons came around and destroyed all the voting materials in that polling unit. But the shocking part is that people, they came to attack, regrouped themselves, and insisted that they were ready to cast their vote regardless of what happened at the end of the day. But unfortunately, nothing of sort happened before we left that place. So all in all, the elections was peaceful in Lagos, except for where we had pockets of violence here and there. And so I can tell you, and if you talk about the logistics of the election management body, that's INEC, in some places elections started very late in Lagos. In Etiosa, for instance, I saw a particular polling unit where election did not start until 19 minutes past 12. You know, the election was supposed to start at 8:30 in the morning, but the election did not start at that polling unit until 12:19 p.m. You know, that's about 19, 11, 12, about 4 hours away from the official time that the poll should have started. I saw another place in, you know, on the Victoria land where the election did not start until around 12 p.m. So, except for situations like this, on the overall, INEC's logistic should be, you know, commended. The polling officers should also be commended for comporting themselves, you know, in accordance with the dictates of the electoral law.
But obviously, Oba, you did mention that there were disruptions and that there were hoodlums moving into different polling booths, and obviously that might have affected the confidence of people in Lagos, certainly in certain parts of it, but to what extent?
Yes, I spoke with some of the voters. Some of them came back. There's even a situation where a lady was injured, and despite that she was already treated, she returned to a polling unit, insisting that she must cast a vote. So I think a lot of people were undaunted by some of this violence. In Surulere, where I went to, I saw people, you know, coming back to that polling unit with the hope of casting their vote. But unfortunately, the electoral officers on duty had already, you know, left that polling unit, and there was no security measure put in place, so there was nobody to even attend to them. So I saw a lot of people that were not moved by this pocket of violence, and they insisted that they must cast their vote. But you agree with me that we also have people that will be worried, that will be bothered about their own safety. And, you know, some of them will never return to that polling unit for fear of further attacks.
Obade, thank you so much for the great job you have done so far from Lagos. Obade is reporting from Nigeria's commercial capital, the election coverage today. And of course, you're watching special coverage of Nigeria's 2023 presidential and National Assembly elections, Charles. We also have National Assembly elections today.
Absolutely.
You know, thank you, Nick. And I wish the same thing all over Nigeria, because I can't assess it from my own position here. But judging from that, I give them my kudos and say thank you. We want free, fair, and credible election. I came there like you saw, queued up like every other voter, waited for a while. I was number 20 something when I started. Within a short time I was able to vote.
So there were rumors this morning that you had stepped down for particular candidates. How true is that?
No. I have not stepped down for any candidate, and I will not. In this election, if there's anybody people will step down for, it's me. Because somebody just said, well, okay, I'm facing two formidable opponents, and I said the only source of their being formidable is that they were part of those who brought us to this junction. And this junction is not a place where you claim reference, because it's said. So the only person who is formidable in this election is me, because I'm coming with new ideas. I'm coming with a proven track record of performance. I'm coming with what they can call a clean record, and offering a new beginning. The outcome can only be determined by God. Whatever God says, I accept it. It is God that makes it possible for everybody. It's God that will listen and look at the yearnings of Nigerians, especially the poor people who are suffering. Because Nigerians have suffered enough, and I believe God will hear their cry.
What are you telling Nigerians?
Well, what I want to do is make sure that they extend the time of voting. You know, that will help. You know, this is what happen. As long as the works are similar as it is here, I believe they will be able to up within the specified time. And if they don't, they can extend it for a few minutes. That's my appeal. I'm not authorizing them because I'm not having that capacity to do that.
Presidential candidate of Labour Party, Peter Obi, well, he had to beware of fake news almost everywhere these days. There's even one circulating now about INEC postponing certain elections. Well, they've reached us and say, look, disregard it. It's not true. If you don't get to hear from them, probably through us, you should put it in the dustbin. That's where it belongs. Well, we also do have word from the candidate of the People's Democratic Party, Atiku.
Let me ask questions.
Your Excellency, can you comment on the air surrounding these elections?
Yes,
we've seen the Naira redesign policy, perhaps choking, what we used to know about the influence of money politics. This atmosphere, is it a good legacy President Buhari will be leaving?
Your Excellency, from Channels TV, would like to know your expectations. You've just voted, and what you expect from this 2023 presidential election.
Presidential candidate of the People's Democratic Party, Atiku Abubakar, talking about his optimism ahead of that. Now, the man who they all want his seat, the president, he also did vote today. And here now is what he said afterwards.
Then clearly some.
I'm very impressed. I'm very happy.
What are your expectations having voted, Your Excellency?
Well, as a candidate I voted for, I already mentioned it in so many number of states, in Nasarawa, in Katsina, in Sokoto, all over the place. I mentioned my favorite candidate, and I believe my constituency will choose him 100%.
What is your advice to Nigerians as they await the announcement of the results?
Yes, Nigerians should make sure that they have been respected. That means the candidates they want to vote for, they are allowed to vote for him. It is a pity there is only one woman candidate from Adamawa State. So the woman kindly follow our APC presidential candidate, and everybody knows him.
This is the first time since 2003 that your name is not on the ballot. How has been the experience?
It's very exciting. I look at those who are competing, and some of them are so agitated. They didn't know that I tried 3 times. I ended up in Supreme Court 3 times. And then the first time I said God day, and God sent technology. With permanent voters card, no fraudulent person can come and claim anything more than 1 vote for himself.
President Muhammadu Buhari speaking about how exciting it is not being on the ballot and watching others fight the battle just as he did. I wonder if it feels like, what, PlayStation for him now, who knows? Well, we do have Iliasu. He's in Kano covering several persons, including the candidate of the NNPP. He's on standby now to bring us an update on what is going on where he tell us what's happening at the moment where you are.
Hello, Chamberlain. Actually, it's been a long day today. The election starts early today, but unfortunately, in so many places, the election did not start on time. However, after the election starts, so people are allowed to continue voting even after 2:30 p.m. As I am talking to you now, in some polling units, they are still counting their ballots because they couldn't finish the elections early because there are a lot of people on queue. So I was also able to speak to the presidential candidate NPP, and he expressed his displeasure with regards to how the election starts. However, he is optimistic that the election will be credible. On the other hand, we were also able to get the governor of Kano State, who was actually impressed by the effort of INEC, and he expressed also his optimism that the election will be credible. With me here is Dr. Mustafa Muhammad, who is actually an election observer. We are going to discuss on how the election went on and what were his observations. Dr. Mustafa, can you tell us what you have observed so far?
Thank you very much. To start with, let me quickly start from yesterday. The distribution of the sensitive material, I was in INEC. As at 12 noon, already the sensitive material has been distributed through the collaboration with the NURTW and NATO. I have to commend the effort of Kano INEC. And this morning, as early as 6:37, most of the polling unit visited. We have seen the presence of security agents, which is very commendable, and at positive sides. And I have to also appreciate the early distribution of materials to most of the polling stations in Kano State, and the participation or the presence of...
As a hugely competitive ballot, I wonder if that competition has been borne out in some of the chaos and disruptions and that we've seen today in this election. Is that as a result of competitive nature, or are these things that happen normally in Nigerian elections?
No, I think it's as a result of the competitive nature of these elections. And in fact, if you look at some of the places which have shown violence, which have been violent today, they've also been violent pre-elections, even during some of the party primaries, for instance. So if you take Lagos, for instance, from our ACLED Nigerian Election Watch database, we've consistently mentioned that the numbers of cult attacks that have happened in the last 1 year in that area has been high, also in terms of criminalities. So it's not out of it to actually see this happen. Then being also a cosmopolitan city where it is it's not just about one ethnic group. You can't compare it to like Ekiti or Oyo, in southwest of the country, and Ogun, which have been relatively peaceful in terms of election. You find that this is a state that is very cosmopolitan in nature, with many ethnicity represented in it, and also represented in a particular part of the state itself. So it makes it highly competitive because you cannot actually define who will vote. Then the competitive nature of the election also comes up, not just because it's an open race, but because also we are looking at the changing trends where we can no longer project based on our previous historical data. So think of it, President Muhammadu Buhari's 12 million votes, which belongs to him as Buhari, not to the APC, is up for grab in these elections. The 14 states that the People's Democratic Party is won since the 1999 elections is also in contention. So there is actually a scramble for what has been the previous constant in these elections, without us now bringing the issue of identity variables that is actually defining the elections.
Fascinating.
Interesting. Mr. Osaze Uzi, what do you think is at stake in this election? Yes, it's the 7th consecutive one since the return to democracy. We are proudly one of the most stable democracies in the sub-region in Africa. But what's really at stake? I mean, you hear of beaver snatching, ballot box snatching. Okay, I'm told that we have a problem with the connection to Mr. Osaze there. Let me come back to you, Diet, then. I mean, what would you say is really at stake? You've highlighted the fact that, you know, a lot is for grabs for the politicians, talking about the votes. Every vote counts. But when you hear that we have this number of disturbances, despite a peace accord that was signed 3 times, the last days ago with President Muhammadu Buhari in attendance, what do you make of all of that? Does it speak to lack of voter awareness and the importance of this election? What do you make of it?
I think it's because elections in Nigeria is zero-sum game. Actually, you have to win at all costs. It's an investment. This is not just only about the candidate, it's also about the party. You are out of office for 4 years. Do you know what it means? Let alone being out of office for 8 years for some of these actors. But what's also important to note is that with the improvement and deployment of technology itself, it means that the previous ways of actually rigging are no longer in contest. So you have to deny people the vote. You have to do voter suppression in different ways we have seen in these elections. Either the destruction of electoral materials, either the intimidation of voters, either, you know, in different ways. I'm sure by tomorrow we are coming up with our report. We'll actually be very expansive with it. Also, the demonetization policy means that you cannot instrumentalize vote buying the way you should. And we have also noted that in previous presidential elections, vote buying isn't rife the way it is when you have the subnational elections. You must indeed have a huge war chest to be able to buy out the whole of Nigeria, buy off the whole of Nigeria to win. So it will be a bit of everything. And now there is naira scarcity. How many people can you actually pay in dollars? Or how many people do want to collect the rice or the clothing or the wrappers that are being shared? Some people want immediate gratification, which is not missing. So there is a need to resort to one strategy, which largely in these elections, at least today, the first part of the elections is being instrumentalizing violence.
Well, let's see if we've got Mr. Oluwole Osaze Uzi. You couldn't hear us just a minute ago, but I'm assuming that you can now. So let me...
We'll stay on to make sure that we keep you posted. Back to you, Chamberlain.
What indeed, Sadiq Ilyasu, brilliant.
And so from Kano, let's go on to the National Coalition Center, where our correspondent Linda Akibe is standing by to give us an update on what's going on. Hello, Linda. What's happening there?
Hello, Nota. So we're still here at the National Coalition Center in the Federal Capital Territory, where election results will be announced right here. But it's not going to be announced today. The Coalition Center will be officially opened tomorrow. That's according to the INEC chairman. He said this in a number of briefings which he had earlier on with journalists here. Now, one of the things he mentioned here was that INEC is still on top of the situation of all that has been happening. They've been receiving reports from the field about voting starting late in some of the centers, specifically in Lagos, and also issues of thuggery and voter violence. But he says that the Electoral Commission is looking at these issues, and that some places where this thuggery occurred, the elections will continue tomorrow. But he hasn't said, given this definitive answer in some of the other places where thuggery was mentioned. Now, in the hall here, you can see that the place is winding up. It's dark. Most of the journalists have left to reconvene tomorrow, when the collation of results is expected to start by noon tomorrow. So we'll all convene here tomorrow for the collation of the presidential election.
Well, Inayat spoke about weaponization of violence. Let's talk about weaponization of information. And I wonder if CDD is also considering that aspect in this election. We've had speculation, fake news, disinformation, whatever you want to call it. How much of a role did those play? How much of that have we seen so far?
I think so far so good. It's played a very huge role in the elections, and I think as media houses, as civil society, we have to keep telling Nigerians to be wary of the information they consume, because as polls are rounding up, we'll start seeing a lot of results coming out. This is the stage of weaponization of results. From yesterday, we started with the audio, which we fact-checked at the CDD and came up with the fact that there was a 97% that it was actually a doctored one, deep fake. We've also seen a lot of deep fake in our social media analytics since the beginning of the day, with voices alter. You see at the beginning of the polls is about candidates stepping down for the other in order to ensure that their vote goes sideways. In between polls, they also bring pictures. Some of it emanated from Ghana, not even Nigeria, suggesting violence, really. Some of these are also used as voter suppression strategy. It's also the idea to confuse people. And in this election cycle, we've actually seen much more disinformation than what we saw in the 2019 elections. And it's really worrying, because especially as we are towards the end of the polls where counting will begin. Not because if you think just of results, the way it can rile up tension, the way it can come up that people will start believing that one candidate is winning or another candidate is winning, without putting it again in context that in this country we have 176,846 polling units, and only in 240 are empty polling units. Who is able to tally? Who is able to know what is happening? And even looking at the electoral geography of the country. So this is the time to keep talking about be wary of what you consume. Check, fact check. Everybody must become a fact checker, because one of the factors influencing this election is that of information, really.
Well said.
Absolutely. And let me come to you, Osaze Uzi. You have already talked about the fact that you think you're quite encouraged by the way that the Independent National Electoral Commission performed. Some people would argue that we find ourselves going through the same rut over and over again. I mean, you've had, as my colleague Adesua mentioned earlier, 4 years to prepare, not you in particular, but INEC, to prepare for this election. But be that as it may, let's look forward, because the things that have happened. Presumably by Sunday, I would imagine proper counting will begin, and it'll presumably take about 3 or 4 days for results to emerge. Is that right?
Well, I think that question was put to the INEC chairman yesterday. Very well. I don't know what you mean by proper counting. Proper counting has begun in all those units where elections did hold and were concluded. A lot of, in the IRF portal, results are already being uploaded. So I don't know what you mean by proper counting. All those areas where elections took place seamlessly, the results have been announced at the polling unit level. First of all, the ballots have been sorted, they've been counted, and results announced. So what we are waiting for is actually collation, or the units where results are still being awaited, they will be uploaded. The units where it did not take place tomorrow, or whenever subsequent date that the Commission fixes for the election, it will be held. But collation will start, and nobody knows for sure how long it will take. For as long as it takes to ensure that all votes cast have been sorted and counted, then results will be declared. I think it's as simple as that. And anybody complaining 4 year cycles, and except they haven't lived in Nigeria in the last 1 month, it's ridiculous. You must situate things within the context in which they are. It takes most people 6, 7, 8 hours to obtain fuel. Everybody knows that, and the price is what it is. So let us not take things out of context. In everything we do, we must situate them in the context in which we live in. I think that's only fair.
Indeed, and just quickly to add to that, or ask you, because we had a former national electoral commissioner here from INEC moments ago, and she said something. She raised an issue about institutionalizing the workers we use for electoral processes. Perhaps that will make the process a bit more, less hazardous than we have it now, for lack of a word to use. What do you think about that? Every 4 years, we change the ad hoc staff that we use, we change people that we use for our elections, and that might actually cause some problems in the polling units because they're inexperienced to a certain level. It also speaks to training that we give our ad hoc staff. What do you have to say to all of that?
Well, like all good arguments, there are two sides to the coin. When you institutionalize, professionalize ad hoc staff, they no longer become ad hoc in the first place. They now become institutional staff. And then you know these people. So all those politicians and the political class, for example, who want to reach these people, they know where to reach them, how to reach them, and they know these are the people that will be deployed. So that is the flip side of the coin. The advantage is that you may not have to do as much training as you would otherwise do because you understand the basics. And I think, to be fair to the Commission, each batch of National Youth Service Corps members that come, each batch, goes to the camps to do some basic training. And this is not a PhD thesis or dissertation where you have to go in depth and train them. These people, first of all, are literate, they're educated, they've been certified as being fit. I don't think you are going to get a larger mass, a crop of people who are educated like that. The only other thing is that you go to the streets and recruit unemployed graduates or unemployed people, and you know the dangers that portends. So I cannot think of any. Before the deployment of members of National Youth Service Corps, we used, INEC used to use teachers, they used to use all categories of people. And we know how we came here. We should never, ever forget our history. The electoral process has evolved over the years. Many things have been tried. INEC at about 2006 advertised for certain retired people, judges, magistrate, directors, civil servants, retired military personnel. The response to act as ad hoc staff, the response was very, very poor indeed. And many of the people, it had to discard that. So prior to now, we have tried things, it didn't work, and that is why we have evolved to where we are today. We can tweak it a little bit, but the fundamentals are still solid, are still there, and nobody has brought any arguments, has brought sufficient alternatives that will solve this. And don't forget, many of these supervisors.
Come with me, let's talk. Now, you see, confidence is a very attractive trait a man can possess, and it's the entire package.
Have had 1-2 cyclical experience. So it's a mix, and let us not forget that.
And Idia Hassan, I mean, you've watched these elections all day. Today, you have a team of people out in the field. You have an election analysis center set up. Yours is one of the most reliable in the West African sub-region. Having looked at this day so far, in terms of what's emerged so far, could it be described as a mixture of expectation, hope, but also a measure of concern, considerable anxiety? I mean, you mentioned that you were going to be producing a preliminary report tomorrow. I wonder what that report will contain.
I think our report still will go back to our 5 highs, which we've said will be defining these elections in terms of institution. In terms of INEC, I do agree with Mr. Uzi that it's right that the Commission is conducting these elections against the background of Naira's scarcity and false scarcity. Yes, be that as it may, but we also do note that the late opening also dampened citizens' enthusiasm in these elections. It takes only somebody who is so determined, which we saw, to wait at the poll, you know, in different, and to wait at the polls and cast their vote in parts of the country. So relative, in some parts of the country, they actually started polling at 8. But in other parts, it was at 10:30, 11, they were just starting, and with very huge polling units. The beavers itself actually functioned in some parts, but in other parts, it did not actually function well. So with the functionality of the beavers, the only thing I think we should give INEC kudos to, from what we are finding from our report, where there are histories of challenges of like malfunctioning within the hour, the rack takes. Like the technicians, they came and they actually fixed it, which is actually commendable. But these elections, for many people, was a signpost for many things to happen. It was for them to see what technology could actually bring. And maybe we raised the expectation of people too much. But again, the positive, like I want to start seeing the positive, I think. I started the day by saying that this will be the first time since 2011 that we not postponed the elections, either the elections, maybe a few weeks to the elections or few hours to the commencement of the elections. Many naysayers actually expected that the elections would be postponed. We woke up and we had these elections, but we still have to do very well in terms of our logistics management. Then we also have to actually communicate properly, which I think the Commission has done in this instance. In every part of the world where they are trialing technology all scale for the first time, they've all experienced this kind of teething problems. What we can say is we have experienced it and we have seen attempts to actually correct it. But moving forward, we need to do a lot. We need to do a lot to instill citizens' confidence in the whole electoral process, and it starts with the management of logistics and other sundry issues.
Very well said, Idayat. Chaps, you need to go.
Well, I think we can take one more question, at least one more question. And let me direct this to you because, again, you know, you run a very credible election analysis center, and I know that
my votes. From my observation, you know, actually I observed, you know, there was a little bit delay in delivering the election materials.
Thank you very much.
It's a different story with Mukta Abubakar, who says he didn't wait for too long before voting.
I think I spent 1.5 here, 1.5 hour here. I joined the queue, so I've already cast my votes now.
The voting continued in some of the polling units way beyond the stipulated time. Sifon ACN TVC News, Bauchi.
The 1999 elections, all the presidents in 1999, Obasanjo won with 32 state spreads plus FCT. In 2003, he actually got 32 plus FCT as well in terms of spread. Umaru Yar'Adua, it's as if there is something with the 32 number, except when it got to President Muhammadu Buhari on his first run in 2015, when he had won with 25 plus FCT and later won with the same 32 state. So maybe we will still play with that figure because a person might actually just win the highest number of votes and manage to get this 24 plus FCT spread. We don't know. We are not INEC, but we believe in the process.
Fingers crossed.
Idiot, thank you very much indeed. Idiot Hassan is the director.
Even God, our challenge is according to the Christian faith. I'm a Christian by faith. In the beginning, God created the world. And they created the heaven and it was void until verse 3, everything changed. So we have some glitches. The most important thing is for us not to repeat those things again. So there are things that we need to learn. You could see that the introduction of beavers reduced ballot box snatching, which used to be the trend in the past. With beaver snatching. I listened to the briefing of the INEC chairman. You know, we have regular briefings where he said that they were able to recover some, and then the process was because there is a backup plan. You can still ballot box, but you can't.
You know, talking about ballot box, talking about the beavers machine, as Deji was pointing out, we need it, but it does slow down processes.
But let's hear what he had to say as well after he cast his ballot.
Today I came and, of course, casted my vote here. But when I went to the first unit, they couldn't find my name. We had to go to the other one in the other class. And I was very happy that we were able to do it correctly, and I was able to vote. If I didn't vote, I would have been an angry man that millions of people are voting for him, and I couldn't vote. So I think that is settled. The only thing is you could see the huge number of people. The turnout was so high, and unfortunately, the equipment they are using is fairly slow. And not only that, immediately I finished voting, it broke down, and I was told they were repairing it. I believe that INEC should look at all ways of ensuring that when people come, within a short period of time, they vote and go. And We were told that it started after 11. I don't know whether you came when you came there, but we are told the INEC could only start after 11 a.m. This is something that could start.
Voted for
So
this purpose.
INEC needs
So
to know.
they need to explain to us, and we have said it. Anyone that subverts the democratic process is committing a treason, because in democracy, power comes through the ballot, not through the gun. Now, if you subvert that process, you are preventing people from electing their representative. You are preventing the democratic process of taking place. In military parlance, it is called a coup, and it's a coup. And so those that are given responsibility must be held accountable. And some of us have advocated this, Uncle Yori, that there is the need for administrative query, and there's the need for
entire system and how it played out. Well, ladies, gentlemen, like Nigerians, we're all watching and waiting for the results. Well, yeah, they did put out some facts and figures. Mr. Abdul, you may have seen this as well. Well, it's about watching the vote now. They did crunch some figures in terms of what transpired out there from what they saw. So take a look at some of these ones, which is out there at the moment. Okay, well,
but that is actually a statement now that we're seeing, a statement of concern from Yaga Africa, saying that they are deeply concerned with the delay in uploading polling unit results for the presidential election on the INEC election result portal. As at 7 p.m. on election day, no result was uploaded after voting, and counting ended in several polling units. Hashtag Nigeria Decides 2023. So that is a statement, a brief statement of sorts from Yaga Africa there, stating their concern with the delay in uploading polling unit results for the presidential elections on the election result portal. Well, it was supposed to be a game changer, the IREV, which INEC had raved about. Apart from the beavers, part of the innovation that we were also witnessing for these elections is the fact that the results from polling units were supposed to be uploaded with the beavers on the IREV, and that, you know, members of the voting public should be able to have access. But this is the concern that Yaga is raising, that as at 7 p.m., we've seen that from a number of our correspondents, collation is about to start in some states. So voting did happen, and voting has ended in many polling units. But as we speak, you know, the results are yet to be uploaded to the IREV. How concerned are you about this? Let me start with you, Abosade.
I mean, I think it's very concerning. You know, by this time, citizens are waiting to start to see results coming in. And I think it's this over-dependence on the power of technology, right? The fact that we should have contingency upon contingency plans. And so that is what I would have expected from INEC, that, you know, there would be a plan B and a plan C to the IREV portal, whether this is about decentralizing the technology in terms of the system. I think it's also concerning that we haven't heard from INEC themselves to let us know, because that statement was as at 7 p.m., it's almost 9 p.m. now, what exactly is going on. So it's definitely concerning, and I would definitely align with Yaga that this is not what we were expecting.
You know, before you come out, just add this to what to your submission. I asked Linda a question if INEC mentioned anything about the upload of the results, and from our correspondent Linda at the Coalition Center, she says INEC says it will start uploading results will start coming up from tomorrow. But I do know that from my polling unit, for instance, they had to go with the INEC officials to the Coalition Center just to be able to upload their results. And some other people have had the similar experience, and reports also coming in here. So how do you think this can be worked out?
I think the result she was referring to are collated results that will actually now be received by the National Coalition, the center. But the IREV is designed to receive result from polling unit. So immediately after voting has stopped and you put everything together, you just send it, and you use the same beavers to send it. So it's not raw result. So it looks more like a scan and a PDF version of that sheet of the result sheet that you use in the recording. That's what you send. The initial thing we got was that they were having problem with the portal. Then reporter was back, but yet nothing was coming in. It's supposed to have run concurrently or even before collations, because this is coming directly from the polling unit. So it's about polling unit level kind of aggregation.
Right now, there should be some results.
There should be some result. We used that. That happened in Ekiti, and that was also done in Osun election. And that was a big game changer for INEC.
Okay, because sorry, if I may interrupt, the INEC, former INEC official we had here this morning, said the technology was designed in such a way that on the beavers, they would upload the results.
Yes.
And even if there's no network, wherever they get to where there's network, it automatically uploads on its own.
The beaver has a camera. Yes. It's just like your phone camera. You put the paper,
you scan,
and you just scan.
Or like an iPad.
Yeah. You just take the photo and then you send you send it, and it goes straight to that portal. And then we can receive it. Anyone. It's a portal that is accessible to the public. So anyone can go to that portal and begin to download the result. And that allows you to run comparison with what is collated eventually to determine whether anything happens along that line. And with the IRF, citizens can actually sit in their rooms and begin to calculate, to check the way the whole thing is going and who is probably the possible winner. And they may not, or they are not supposed to announce the result. INEC will have to eventually do that, but it keeps citizens informed. And I think this is what we need at this time, and in this kind of election that is so nerve-wracking, and people are looking forward to this.
Okay,
but it's very disappointing, honestly.
If we could bring in the professor to tell us, Prof, you've heard the reports from our correspondents and the testimony of those who participated in the election exercise. Bring that and tie into what we're talking about right now, which is the uploading of the results.
It's a beautiful country, and I am incurably hopeful, like Bishop Coker, who will say that Nigeria is one of the greatest countries in the world. We are blessed by both human and natural resources.
The political psychology of voters is something that we have to think about negatively and positively. The IRF is supposed to make the electoral process more transparent and create in voters a better sense of confidence in the electoral process. So what is happening now is, for me, is completely opposite of what